Welcome back, thanks for tuning into Reddit Cheating Stories. Please give us a subscribe, and let's dive in. The chipped mug warmed David's hands as he stared out the kitchen window. Rain lashed against the glass, mirroring the storm brewing inside him. He'd always loved rainy days. They used to be a cozy invitation to curl up with Sarah, a book, and the comforting scent of cinnamon from her perpetually baking experiments. Now, the gray skies just amplified the grayness that had settled over his life. He and Sarah had been together for 10 years, married for 7. They'd built a life, a comfortable, predictable life in their small suburban house with its overgrown garden and slightly crooked fence. They were the couple everyone envied, the solid, dependable pair who always seemed happy. David worked as a software engineer, a job he found challenging and fulfilling. Sarah was a marketing manager at a local firm, bright, ambitious, and the life of every party. Or at least, that's who he thought she was. The seed of doubt had been planted a few months ago, a tiny, insidious sprout that had now grown into a monstrous, thorny vine, choking the life out of their marriage. It started with subtle changes. Sarah working late more often, her phone constantly buzzing with messages she'd quickly hide. A new perfume, a more polished look. He dismissed it as stress, as her career finally taking off. He'd even encouraged her, proud of her ambition. He should have paid closer attention. The truth had come crashing down on him last week, a brutal, shattering blow. Sarah, pale and trembling, had confessed. An affair. With a coworker. And she was pregnant. The world had tilted on its axis. The solid ground beneath his feet had crumbled, leaving him adrift in a sea of disbelief, anger, and a profound, aching sadness. He'd barely spoken since. He moved through the house like a ghost, the familiar rooms now echoing with the weight of her betrayal. He heard Sarah stir upstairs. He knew he couldn't avoid her forever. He had to talk, to understand, something. He didn't know what. He placed the mug in the sink and walked slowly up the stairs. He found her sitting on the edge of their bed, staring at her hands. She looked small and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the confident woman he knew. "Sarah," he said, his voice flat. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. "David," she whispered. He sat down on the bed, a chasm of space between them. "Why?" The question was a raw, ragged plea. She flinched. I don't know. I really don't. It just happened. It just happened." He repeated, the bitterness creeping into his voice. "You just happened to sleep with someone else. You just happened to get pregnant." "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice rising in defense. "It wasn't planned. It was a mistake. A mistake with consequences that will last a lifetime," he countered, the anger finally surfacing. "A mistake that has destroyed everything we built." "I know," she sobbed. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry, David. So sorry." He looked at her, at the tears streaming down her face, and felt a flicker of the old love, the old tenderness. But it was quickly extinguished by the burning resentment that had taken root in his heart. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Sarah," he said, his voice cold. "Sorry doesn't change the fact that you betrayed me. Sorry doesn't change the fact that you're carrying another man's child." The words hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Sarah recoiled as if he'd slapped her. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice barely audible. He didn't know. He honestly didn't. The future he had envisioned, the future they had planned together, had vanished in an instant. He had no idea what the next step was, what he wanted, or even who he was anymore. "I need time," he said, standing up. "I need time to think." He left the room, leaving Sarah alone with her tears and her secret. He went downstairs and out into the rain, needing the cold, harsh reality to shock him back to his senses. He walked for hours, lost in his thoughts, the rain soaking him to the bone. The next few weeks were a blur of strained silences, awkward interactions, and sleepless nights. They lived in the same house, but they were worlds apart. David tried to process everything, to make sense of the senseless. He replayed their relationship in his mind, searching for clues, for signs he had missed. He wondered if he had been blind, if he had been too complacent, too willing to take their happiness for granted. He also wrestled with the question of the baby. It was an innocent life, a life that deserved love and care. But it was also a constant reminder of Sarah's infidelity, a living symbol of their broken marriage. Could he ever accept it as his own? Could he ever forgive Sarah? He confided in his best friend, Mark, over a few beers at their usual pub. Mark listened patiently, offering words of support and understanding. "This is a shitty situation, Dave," Mark said, shaking his head. "No one deserves this. But you gotta figure out what you want. Do you want to try to save the marriage? Or is it too far gone?" "I don't know, man," David admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I love her, I really do. But I don't know if I can ever trust her again. And the baby. I just don't know." "That's understandable," Mark said. "It's a lot to process. But you need to talk to Sarah. You need to be honest with her about how you're feeling. And you need to listen to what she has to say." David knew Mark was right. He had been avoiding Sarah, afraid of the confrontation, afraid of the emotions that would surface. But he couldn't keep running. He had to face the situation head-on. He found Sarah in the garden, tending to her roses. It was a rare sunny day, and the flowers were in full bloom, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the somber mood in the air. "Sarah," he said, his voice softer than it had been in weeks. She looked up, her eyes wary. "David." He sat down beside her on the grass. "We need to talk," he said. She nodded. "I know. I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. "About us, about the baby, about everything." He paused, searching for the right words. "I'm still angry, Sarah. I'm still hurt. And I don't know if I can ever completely forgive you. But I also know that I still love you. And I don't want to lose you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, David," she whispered. "But," he continued, holding up a hand, "things can't go back to the way they were. We need to rebuild our relationship, brick by brick. We need to be honest with each other, to communicate openly and honestly. And we need to figure out what we're going to do about the baby." "I understand," she said, wiping away her tears. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. I know I hurt you deeply, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust." "What about the father?" David asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. Sarah hesitated. He doesn't know. And I don't want him to know. It was a mistake, David. A stupid, reckless mistake. I don't want him in our lives." David looked at her, searching her eyes for any hint of deceit. He saw only remorse and desperation. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay. But we need to be clear about this. If we're going to stay together, this baby is ours. We will raise it together, as a family. And you will have no contact with him." Sarah nodded fiercely. "Yes. Yes, I promise. This baby is ours." The decision to stay together was just the first step. The road ahead was long and arduous, filled with challenges and uncertainties. They started couples therapy, learning to communicate more effectively and to address the underlying issues that had led to the affair. It was painful, dredging up old wounds and confronting uncomfortable truths. But it was also cathartic, allowing them to release years of pent-up resentment and to begin the process of healing. David also started individual therapy, to deal with his own anger and resentment. He struggled with feelings of inadequacy, of not being enough for Sarah. He wondered if he had somehow driven her into the arms of another man. "It's not your fault, David," his therapist assured him. "Sarah made a choice. Her actions are her responsibility. You can't blame yourself for her infidelity." He knew his therapist was right, but it was hard to shake the feeling that he had somehow failed as a husband. As Sarah's pregnancy progressed, David found himself increasingly drawn to the idea of becoming a father. He started reading books about pregnancy and childbirth, attending doctor's appointments with Sarah, and even helping her decorate the nursery. He still struggled with the fact that the baby wasn't his biologically, but he couldn't deny the growing love he felt for the child growing inside Sarah. He also had to deal with the reactions of their friends and family. Telling them about the affair and the pregnancy was one of the hardest things they had ever done. Some were supportive, offering words of encouragement and understanding. Others were judgmental, questioning their decision to stay together. His parents were particularly disapproving. They couldn't understand why he would want to raise another man's child. "You deserve better, David," his mother said, her voice laced with pity. "You shouldn't have to put up with this." But David stood firm. He loved Sarah, and he wanted to make their marriage work. He was willing to fight for their future, even if it meant facing disapproval and criticism. The day Sarah went into labor was a whirlwind of panic and excitement. David drove her to the hospital, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He stayed by her side throughout the labor, offering words of encouragement and support. He watched in awe as she brought their daughter into the world, a tiny, perfect being with 10 fingers and 10 toes. They named her Emily. Holding Emily in his arms for the first time, David felt an overwhelming surge of love. He knew, in that moment, that he would do anything to protect her, to provide for her, to be the best father he could be. The fact that she wasn't his biologically didn't matter. She was his daughter, and he loved her unconditionally. The first few months of Emily's life were challenging. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, and constant diaper changes took their toll. But they also brought moments of joy and laughter, moments that strengthened their bond as a family. David watched Sarah blossom into a mother, her love for Emily transforming her into a new person. He saw her tenderness, her patience, her unwavering devotion to their daughter. He began to see her in a new light, to appreciate her strength and resilience. He also started to forgive her, not completely, but enough to move forward. He realized that everyone makes mistakes, that everyone is capable of hurting the people they love. The important thing was to learn from those mistakes and to strive to be better. 5 years passed. Emily grew into a bright, curious, and energetic little girl. She was the center of their world, the glue that held their family together. David and Sarah worked hard to create a loving and stable home for her. They made sure to spend quality time together, to communicate openly and honestly, and to always put Emily's needs first. Their marriage wasn't perfect. They still had their disagreements, their challenges. But they had learned to navigate them with grace and understanding. They had learned to forgive each other, to trust each other, and to love each other unconditionally. One evening, as David was tucking Emily into bed, she looked up at him with her big, blue eyes and said, "Daddy, I love you." David's heart swelled with love. "I love you too, sweetheart," he said, kissing her forehead. As he walked out of her room, he paused and looked back. Emily was lying in her bed, her eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her face. In that moment, David knew that he had made the right decision. He had chosen to forgive, to love, and to build a family. And he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. He found Sarah in the living room, reading a book. He sat down beside her on the couch and took her hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "For what?" she asked, looking at him with a questioning gaze. "For everything," he said. "For staying, for fighting, for giving me Emily. For giving us a second chance." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with love. "We did it together," she said. "We built this together." He leaned in and kissed her, a long, lingering kiss that spoke volumes. It was a kiss of forgiveness, of love, and of hope. It was a kiss that sealed their commitment to each other, to their family, and to their future. The rain had stopped, and the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds. A rainbow arched across the sky, a symbol of hope and renewal. David looked at Sarah, at Emily's picture on the mantelpiece, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had weathered the storm, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more in love than ever before. The aroma of cinnamon filled the air. David smiled, recognizing Sarah's signature scent. He walked into the kitchen to find her surrounded by flour and baking paraphernalia, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "What are you up to?" he asked, leaning against the doorway. "Baking cookies for Emily's soccer team," she said, wiping a smudge of flour from her cheek. "They have a big game tomorrow." David chuckled. "She's really good, you know. She gets her athleticism from you." Sarah rolled her eyes playfully. "And her brains from you, of course." He walked over and wrapped his arms around her, kissing her neck. "You know, sometimes I still can't believe how lucky I am," he said. "After everything that happened." Sarah turned in his arms and looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth. We both got lucky, David, she said. We fought for this. We earned it. He knew she was right. They had faced their demons, confronted their past, and emerged stronger than ever. Their marriage was a testament to the power of forgiveness, the resilience of love, and the importance of commitment. Emily burst into the kitchen, her soccer uniform muddy and her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Mom, Dad, can you help me with my science project? She asked. Of course, sweetie, David said, ruffling her hair. What's it about? As they gathered around the kitchen table, poring over textbooks and diagrams, David felt a surge of contentment. He had a loving wife, a beautiful daughter, and a life filled with purpose and meaning. He had faced his greatest challenge and had emerged victorious. He had learned that love can conquer all, that forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, and that family is the most precious gift of all. The past would always be a part of their story, a reminder of the pain and the struggle. But it wouldn't define them. They had chosen to move forward, to build a future filled with love, laughter, and unwavering support. And as he looked at his wife and daughter, he knew that he had made the right choice. He had chosen family. He had chosen love. And he had never been happier. If you enjoy this infidelity story, please subscribe, like, share and give us your thoughts in comment. Thanks.